So I think when I first took the role, the MLRO role, so the first time I was in the chair, that was daunting. Not only am I kind of in the chair if it all goes wrong, but I'm also responsible for all these people that are working here should anything all go wrong. And that was pretty daunting. The risk management around options is a challenge. Managing the book as well. Those mornings where you wake up and cable has gone, you're like, is it that morning?
In this episode, we speak to Neville Lacey, the money laundering reporting officer from Equals Group. From a time when he finished school and wanted to work in police customs, through the first job in banking that he had, all the way through to the industry figurehead he is today, this is a wonderful story from a really interesting guy.
When I look back, I think to myself, and I probably wasn't the best employee, but in my next job, because of that, I said to myself, no matter what happens, I am now the master of my destiny.
I feel privileged because there's people that haven't been in this industry not very long. There's people like you who have been in it a long time. For you to say yes to doing this is very kind. Yeah, well, I try and keep myself off the radar. I haven't got the time normally. It's like, but I thought, I don't know, when we met, sometimes you just feel like you get on with someone and it's like, it's easy conversation. Whereas, other people you think, I can't bother, I've spent enough time with you in this meeting. That'll do, you've had 60 minutes. Yeah, 35 if you're lucky. Do you think I can focus for 60 minutes?
Oh yeah, so I was going to say that. So you were diagnosed with ADHD when?
Would have been September 21.
So you're 3 years in, coming up to, and I'm a year in. So we're both two adults learning to live with ADHD. We are adults. So in this, we're going to keep each other down the straight and narrow as much as our brains will allow. But it's worth calling out because I don't think people do that good a job of trying to understand divergence. So maybe this episode will be a case study.
Either that or some kind of was it like a podcast what not to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the how not to.
Never get two guys with ADHD in a room because it's just going to go wrong.
It will.
Yeah.
So you have an important job at a big company, fair to say.
Yep.
What is the company and what is your job? And if you could start with the job in a way that my nan would understand it, and then we'll get into more detail from there.
The company Equals Money. So I joined Equals Money almost exactly a year ago. Equals Money do a variety of different payment services. So banking as a service is something we've launched fairly recently, which is quite unique. Cards, virtual cards, real cards, all that kind of fun stuff.
So who would an Equals Money typical customer be, and what would they get?
Well, there isn't really a typical customer. So
because it's big?
Yeah, because it's a wide range of different products. So, I think when Equals first started, it was called Fairfax, and it was a travel card initially. So, you put your money on the card, you go on holiday and you spend it. But then they started doing international payments, and then they started to acquired a company up in Chester that does cards and also does a sort of I guess you would call it an account, but we're not allowed to call it an account for I guess it's people that can't get banking.
Okay.
So they'll do I don't know, like a product where they can do direct debits and stuff like that and get their benefits paid in. So it's a really
like
nice
a social
product.
inclusion thing.
Yeah.
So how many people are in the company, roughly?
400.
Okay, it's big. It's a big company.
Yeah.
Okay, and so your title, I believe, is money laundering reporting officer, which sounds very pirate-like.
It is, and sometimes it is pirate-like.
What does it do?
So for the benefit of your nan,
thanks.
Essentially, my job is to make sure that there are sufficient processes and procedures and safeguards to avoid the firm being utilised for the laundering of money or criminal activity.
Gotcha. Which when the business started as a company that created cash cards, notoriously they are used for laundering money.
Correct. Yeah.
But nowadays there's a more sophisticated fight on your hands.
It's changing every day. I think it used to be that the criminals were, I don't know, one or two steps ahead. Now they are way ahead. They are ahead of where we are, and we are catching them up. It's a case of you're it used to be a case in this game where you wouldn't have any sophisticated systems or processes in place. You would literally just be, because it was cash. When I first started in this game, it was all cash. It was very easy to see who was a bad guy. They almost walked in with black and white striped jerseys and bag on their back with swag. It was relatively easy. But now there could be 16-year-old kids sitting in Chechnya, hacking into people's bank accounts and moving the money around. It's a different game, and you've got to have all the systems. You've got to be looking at IP addresses, device IDs. You've got to be looking. I mean, there's some cool tech out there that can even look at how somebody is typing to see if the
angle of the phone. Isn't it? I've heard about this, right? So it's the notion that in a person's hand, the phone is at a certain angle, but in a bot farm where they've got the phones propped up, they were saying. But then I heard that the bot farms are now placing phones at different angles in the racks.
They are. I mean, they were using VPNs, and now we can get through VPNs, and it's just a constant game of cat and mouse.
Amazing.
But it's quite cool. I have to say, it's not something that I thought I'd ever be doing, but it's good fun.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you. We've not done this before, so we're trying something new. 4 quick fire questions, and then we're going to go back to school. So the first one: if you could have any job in the world for one day, what would it be and why?
I would like to run the National Crime Agency. Yeah.
Just for a day, though?
Just for a day.
Okay, why? Because...
Actually, you probably can't put this out because I'll probably be on the watch list from that point. But I don't know. It's like I know. Because I've been in the game a long time, you kind of know where it's all going on, and you kind of wonder why they're not there. Mm. And so, if I did it for a day, I think I'd be going, right, you need to be going in these different places because that is where you should be looking. Like Company's House. Yeah. Oh yeah. And Company's House is it's a money laundering factory. I mean, and nobody seems to be looking at it. But
So is that would you want to do it because you'd work out why they're not bothering?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could go back into your job and it'd be different, right? I'd
like to understand the challenges behind why they're not doing what I think they should be doing.
Yeah, the obvious fixes.
Yeah, because it's like, because we spend a lot of time liaising with law enforcement, obviously, in our game. And it's kind of, you think to yourself, why is it making it so difficult? Yeah. It shouldn't be difficult to track money launderers and to track fraud. It shouldn't be that difficult. If you've got the resources of a government to hand, I mean, it shouldn't be difficult. So I think if I was able to go in, I guess 2 things would be to try and understand, firstly, I guess, why they're not really making a dent. And secondly, maybe to point out some of the obvious stuff, but there's not much you can do in a day.
I'm sure you don't go. Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Or what's the best piece of advice you'd give to someone, like early in their career, maybe?
I think it's from a career perspective. I think one of my previous bosses was always very much like, don't wait to be asked. That's what he would say. Don't wait to ask me. Don't wait for me to ask you. Go and do it. And then, you might have to apologise later. But, if you know what you're doing, so don't ask. Just,
Decent. It's so simple, but I think it's especially for young people who get into careers, they end up like thinking things should go a certain way and not really testing things out. So I think it's very sensible advice. What's the one thing you're really proud of?
Do you know, when I look around the industry or industries, I see a lot of people that I used to work with, and when I look around and I see their successes, and I would never try and claim any credit for that success, but it makes me feel good to see that they're all doing well.
That's a really special thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely something to be proud of.
You look around and you go, oh, so-and-so is just amazing. Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day who I used to work with, and he's now moved into the crypto space, and I'm like, well, you now need to start teaching me. I said, because I know all about it, but you're in it, so you need to...
Do you know, there's a guy that I mentored for a while, and he started his own business doing very, very well. And the second I met him, I thought, I'm going to work for you one day. You know,
you can see that, can't you?
Of course
people,
you can.
100%.
Yeah, you really can. What's the most ridiculous thing you believed as a child?
Probably Father Christmas, I would imagine. I can't really think of anything specific.
That is stupid in hindsight.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my parents were not storytellers,
no.
So they didn't really I didn't get led to believe in anything too crazy.
Just saw Father Christmas on telly.
Yeah, Father Christmas is like, yeah, who's that bloke? You know. My parents never made that effort of kind of like, you know, oh, you got to go to bed because Father Christmas is coming.
Tooth fairies, all that sort of nonsense.
No, I don't remember the tooth fairy ever visiting me, or if they did, it was not many times, and I lost a lot of teeth.
I do think about this a lot, like how, like, 'cause I want my daughter to grow up to be pragmatic, right? But I also want to have that like enchanting childhood. So I'm going to find out soon where I sit on that blend. So back to school. You went to school in the UK?
Yep.
Yeah. Were you academic? Because in what you do, you've got to be a clever person to do what you do. But were you academic at school?
No. Well, I went to a local comprehensive school, and I was the last year to leave before it closed, and everybody knew that. So even when I joined that comprehensive school when I was 11. Or 10 or 11, whatever it is. And, at that point, everybody knew it was going to close in a few years. So, we had a lot of, shall we say, substitute teachers, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it wasn't great. And I wasn't really, I've always struggled to focus on things that don't interest me. And I think,
now you know why.
Yeah, well, now I know why. Back then, it was like I just thought, I thought I knew better. But
what was it? Naughty kids? Is that what you were told?
No. I was told I was smart but lazy.
Yeah, same.
My the funniest thing I ever had on one of my school reports was Neville is so laid back, he's almost horizontal.
Do you reckon that's carried through? Because in work, when the pressure comes on in certain jobs, especially as your career grows and you get more serious jobs and you look at your salary and you think, well, shit, I've got to earn that. Have you made sure to hold on to being relaxed? Because that's quite a tough thing to do, and a lot of people don't manage it.
I think it was. So I think when I first took the role, the MLRO role, which would have been about, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 years ago. I can't remember more. 15 years ago. So the first time I was in the chair, that was daunting. It was like, right, I'm not only am I kind of in the chair if it all goes wrong, but I'm also responsible for all these people that are working here should anything all go wrong. And that was pretty daunting. But
is that because a big money laundering issue through a payments company or FX company or a bank that can ruin a company?
Absolutely, reputationally, if you get caught up in something like that, or you don't do something appropriately, then you get a bit of bad press, and all of a sudden, whatever reputation you might have.
And reputation is important, right? Because a lot of,
and for me as well, that's you don't want your. I mean, if something like that happened on my watch, I'm not going to get another job anywhere else because everyone's going to go, well, you're the guy that was in the chair.
Have you seen that happen where people in the job? And that's it for them, and they have to find something else.
I've seen people that have been in senior positions in or MLROs or heads of compliance or whatever, where something doesn't go quite right, and word gets round. Certainly within the payment space, which is the lot of old gossips. If you don't hear something about someone else, then you almost take it as a given that someone's either talking about you or your firm.
Yeah.
I think you sort of goes in circles. I was at a conference recently, and someone said, "Oh, we've heard that you're in trouble with the FCA." I'm like, no, it must be our turn on the way round.
Yeah,
and those things happen all the time. I mean, when I was sort of 10 years ago, there was a firm that was always being talked about because they were doing a lot of options, FX options, and it was always, they're in trouble with the FCA because of the options, but. Is there
a log of what the FCA are looking at? Is that public knowledge or not?
Yeah, so the FCA have every year they I think they have it's like a business plan.
Right.
And that business plan usually outlines what their focus will be. I think it's over 3 or 5 years. I can't remember.
Well, I suppose because it's the Financial Conduct Authority, it's a government thing, so they have to publicise that.
So they know, that consumer duty is their big thing at the moment, because it's the 12th principle, which they've never had before. It's a brand new principle. It's been a long time since they did one of those. Yeah. Which is, it's going to be a lot of work on firms, that consumer duty, but, ultimately, it's what they're supposed to be there for, right?
So now you're in this job where you're on the hook for a ton of things, visibility-wise, pressure. You're having to keep up with regulation. You're dealing with money laundering. When you left school, what did you think you were going to do?
Policeman.
Did you?
Yeah.
They're sort of linked.
Yeah.
Why? Why is there this? Why was policing interesting?
I think it was the kind of like the investigation side of it. It's like, and I've always had this, even though perhaps, my wife will always say that, you're very principled, but about everybody else. But, whatever
do as
you
I
do,
say, not as I do.
Exactly. So I have this kind of like really high, I hold everybody else to a really high level. Yeah. So I've always this person is like a criminal, so they should be, whatever. So I think that was kind of it. Even back then, I always thought, well, that's wrong. So, and I applied to become believe it or not, a customs officer when I left school. But
had you been abroad much?
No.
Was there an interest in going abroad?
No.
Or was it just something that came up on the website?
It was more to do with the investigation side of things.
Yeah. So when you applied, did you get in?
Do you know when it was? So it would have been 1989 or whatever. Yeah. God, that's bad.
It's the year I was born, by the way.
Oh man. I'm just gonna go.
I found out the other day I was speaking to GBG and I was like, GBG was founded the year I was born.
That's probably when John Law was there as well, when he was in the short trousers.
He might see this.
He would like that shout out.
Yeah, we'll love that.
But no, it was because when I left school, I left school at 16. I didn't go on to any further education. Yeah. My dad was he was a builder. Mum was a nurse. Yeah. And they, my dad said, unless you're going to go and learn a trade, go and get a job. Mm. And at the time, the banks were recruiting directly from comprehensive schools, 16-year-olds.
Were they really?
Yeah.
What to do, like manual?
Oh, it was like
manual job, like white collar manual.
So basically, it was like they were trying to their kind of MO was, we're going to recruit all this kind of cheap labour. Yeah. And if nothing else, they will fill the void of all of the admin tasks around the bank. But you know what? There'll be some gold in there. Yeah. So it was a way of, I guess, of getting what they deemed to be the best talent out of the local area, because it was all local. So I got hired by the local bank.
Oh, like branch level.
Yeah, local branch of Barclays.
It's like sieving for gold, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it was common back then.
So did you join that and then decide you wanted to go into the police?
No, I wanted to go into the police, but the police, I think at that time, wanted A levels, I think, and I was, my dad was like, go and get a job.
So how long did that first banking job last?
4 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 4 years.
Which bank?
Barclays.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you stay in branch for that 4 years, or did they move you about a little bit, see some different things?
No, I was in branch, but it was where I got into, I guess, FX and payments, because back in those days, an overseas payment was a telegraphic transfer. You had to fill in a form at the branch and you'd hand over the money and it would go. Yeah.
In saying that, when I moved to America, I asked someone in the company that I was working at why we were still receiving checks from customers.
Oh, checks in America. Yeah. But at least they've got it sorted, though, because they've got these scanners that...
Yeah.
You got a scanner and it debits straight away. It's not like...
it's
not like it was here.
Yeah, no.
I mean, when I was at the bank, they were literally, end of every day, all of the checks would get picked up. Yeah. And they would go off to hit somewhere in London. Yeah. And there was actually a place where all the banks swapped checks. Physically swap checks.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild.
I was speaking to a guy the other day at Dun & Bradstreet, and he was saying that he was working Dun & Bradstreet at a time long enough ago that there was a place in the city where if somebody wanted a copy of another company's accounts, someone would literally scan it and then deliver it to them. Because it's not online, right? He said it was like a jukebox. This massive jukebox, and you keyed something in, and it went and got the accounts and pulled it out.
Really?
Yeah, amazing.
I don't remember that.
Mate, yeah,
he must be older than me.
Maybe. So you've done banking, but you've done it because you've not done it because you want to do it.
No,
you've done it because your old man said, if you're not going to go and be a plumber or a brickie, go get a job. Did you learn to love it when you were in it, or was it just a job?
I think the bank was just a job.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Because you're 16 to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, there were better things in life between 16 and 20 of you know, that you can be sure. But it was when I joined the next firm I worked for, I was made redundant from the bank, along with, at the time, it was tens of thousands of redundancies. The banks decided in the mid 90s that they had too many people and they were going to get rid of a load of people, and I was one of those.
Because of the strategy to overhire and find the...
Yeah, I think so. But they were literally tens of thousands they got rid of across the whole, not just Barclays, but all the rest. And, when I look back, I think to myself, and, I probably wasn't the best employee. I won't say any more than that. Yeah. I think on this publicly broadcasted podcast, I'll just say I wasn't the best employee, not the best I could have been. Yeah. But then my next job, because of that, that was like, I said to myself, no matter what happens, I am now the master of my destiny. Yeah. I will always make the decision whether or not I stay or go from a company.
Isn't that interesting that's the thing that's defined? Yeah. So do you think that all the things like work ethic and all that sort of stuff, do you reckon that came out of the, like, not rejection, but like the way that ended? Do you think that's the thing that installed that in you?
I think it's part of it, for definite, because I think my dad had always instilled a big work ethic in me. I mean, my childhood, I was never allowed to lounge around at home or do anything like that. I mean, even between leaving school and starting at Barclays, he was like, well, I hope you don't think you're going to hang around here all summer. So go and get a job. And I was working on the delicatessen counter at Tesco's.
That's how it should be. I'm all for that, by the way.
No, don't get me wrong. I think it's what defined my work ethic. I mean, I don't, much like you, my work doesn't really stop, much to my wife's annoyance. Oh, you working? Yeah. But it's sometimes you've got to turn it off. But it's who we are.
So you went into an FX business. What did you do in that FX business? Were you starting to move towards where you've ended up then?
So I guess I joined really within the branch network. So what I'd been doing at Barclays, essentially, I moved into within an FX firm. And back then, in the mid 90s, it was more cash than transfers. Yeah. We weren't doing a lot of that. And I think...
So it's that people coming in wanting to go on holiday, saying, I've got 300 quid, I want to turn it into euros.
Yeah.
Well, not euros then, of course, it was pesetas and francs.
Pesetas, francs. Deutschmarks, guilders. Oh, I could tell you some stories about 1,000 guilder notes, but I won't. It was in the branch network within that particular company, and I guess the owner of that company, for me, that guy was the guy that I looked up to.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, he was always the first one in the morning, always the last one out, and he valued loyalty, no matter what. There were times at which he probably shouldn't have valued loyalty, and he should have done the right thing. But he always looked back at what people had contributed towards his success. Yeah. And it was the same for me. He sort of said to me, he saw something in me. I think maybe he didn't. Maybe it was someone else. But he said, right, well, because at the time I was working locally, and I live now down near the airport, so I was working within the network of the airport. Okay. And he said, come and work in London. So I came and worked for the branch network in London, and then within about a year, I was running the branch network in London. Wow. About 2 years. So,
isn't it funny that you go from school being cast as smart but lazy, and there's a thing, and I've had this where the first time somebody in a career that is paying you goes, do you know what?
Yeah.
Like, I back you. I've somebody said that something amazing. They refer to it as unconditional positive regard, where
I've never heard of that, but yeah.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's the notion that a person will have your back because they know you've got a level of commitment that warrants it. And it's just such an empowering thing, isn't it?
It is. No, totally. And there's an element of it where you I always felt that I didn't want to let him down as well as myself.
Yeah. Because he's giving you a shot, right?
Yeah, he gave me a big shot.
Yeah. So how was that first commute into London on the train? I bet you felt
horrible.
I mean, it was. That's a shame. I was excited for you.
It was horrible because it was back in the days of the slam door trains. Do you remember the old slam doors? Come on, really?
No. Or maybe when you describe, I've not heard them referred to as slam door trains.
So it was trains haven't always got like the doors that open. You used to actually have to physically open a door.
Oh yeah.
And where at my station, it was I don't even think it was Sutherland what the network was at the time, but the trains were not nice inside.
Right.
And you would you go and you get on the train on the Monday morning and you're pretty sure that Friday night was still there. If you know what I mean. They were not great, but they were always on time.
Yeah. So
I guess I was like, this is horrible. I don't know where to sit because I don't like dirt and filth, and I'm I'm not sitting on that. Yeah. But it was exciting. And I used to buy the Times. Yeah. Never read it, but I used to buy the Times every day.
What to look important? Do you know it's funny? I remember years and years and years ago. I used to when I knew nothing, early jobs. I used to take City AM into the meetings under my arm, and then recently City AM did an article, and they said they referred to me as a fintech whiz. And and I was like, do you know what? That's a mad
nice,
thing
though,
from there to there to not there. They just
maybe. Yeah.
But it's a cool thing. So we did the same thing. We used a newspaper that we didn't know how to read to prove we were clever.
Exactly.
Ironically.
Yeah. But I also had I had the Sun on the inside of it, so I could read the sport.
And then Viz on the inside of the Sun.
Probably.
So you're going in with the Times under your arm. Like that must have been a bit of a I've sort of arrived moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I went out and bought the commuter coat. Yeah. I went to, I think it was some sort of gentleman's outfitter somewhere in Tunbridge Wells, and bought this like £120 commuter jacket. Oh, it was nice. Yeah. I don't think it was cashmere, but it felt like cashmere.
Yeah, I bet it did.
Oh, I thought I'd arrived then.
So what did they have you doing? What was the job?
So, initially I was just running one of the little retail branches. Yeah. But then eventually it was actually running all of the retail branches. So that was like managing the staff, looking at the revenue and the whole P&L thing. That was kind of what I was doing within a few years. I think.
So you're 25 then ish?
Yeah, about that.
That's decent for that age.
Yeah.
And do you think it was just in combination that guy just really backing you and you taking the opportunity?
Totally.
Any luck? People leaving or anything like that?
There was definitely some luck. Yeah. There was a guy that I used to work with, and he was the guy that perhaps shouldn't have had that little bit of loyalty. Yeah. Decent guy, nice guy, but maybe he pushed it too far one day, and then he got kind of moved to one side, and I got moved in. Nice. It was a bit of luck. But I was pushing for that already. I was working with him. Yeah. So it wasn't inevitable, but. So
did you move into London at any point, or did you always stay out of town?
No, we stayed out of town.
Really?
Yeah, because where I live is a really good, used to be a really good commuter town. So 35 minutes into Victoria. Yeah. And then Victoria to Knightsbridge was like a 10, 15 minute walk. Yeah. So why would I want to move in to London? Yeah. Just never did. And when I lived with my wife, she worked the other direction. Yeah. And, my wife doesn't want to drive any more than about 15 minutes. So
good for her.
No, and rightly so. Yeah. But I have an hour. No, I'm joking. She didn't really want to move away. Nor did I. So if she listens to this, you need to cut this out. You need to cut this out.
We're definitely not cutting it out. Can you video her watching this? Because I want to see her reaction. So you've got this job, and you're getting to the point now where, like, you've got a career rather than a job, actually, because there's P&L responsibility, and you. Do you think at any point you thought, this is what I'm going to do now? I'm always going to be doing this sort of thing, whether blindly or not, because you didn't know what else was out there.
Totally. I mean, it was. I actually I did leave that firm for 2 years. Right. And I went to work at one of the big retailers, shall we say. Yeah. I worked there for 2.5 years.
What? Because they had a travel business?
No, it was to do retail.
Oh,
because
you run stores.
Yeah, at that point, I thought I was a retailer.
Yeah, of course you would.
Yeah, why wouldn't I? So I went in there, and I learned a lot in that 3 years. Those retailers, they absolutely they school you in all of the things, all the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned all of the, I guess, the do's and don'ts around HR at that place.
Yeah, sure.
Situational leadership management, all that kind of stuff was actually, it was the one place where I got all of the training, the leadership training, proper training. And I guess after 2.5 years, I realised that I wasn't a retailer really, and
why?
I didn't like. It was not so much I loved the responsibility.
Yeah.
I loved the P&L and I loved all that, but I guess I was, having the responsibility for all of those people didn't really excite me.
Did you also have like a little bit of not a love for, but because if you go into retail, it's broad and vast, right? If you're in stores, it's broad and vast. There's all the different product types. There's logistics. But in the FX world that you're in, there's FX, and you'd got some domain expertise in that. So was there a drawback because of that domain expertise, being a specialist?
Yeah, and it was. I'd kept in touch with the CEO of the firm I left, and randomly I sent him a message at Christmas, Merry Christmas, and he kind of replied back and was like, Merry Christmas, are you after a job? And it was serious. I'm serious. It was kind of like, because he was he was a very forthright guy, and he was like, he always felt like everybody had a reason to do something. So the fact that and I think maybe subconsciously that's what I did want.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously that message was, reaching out.
Yeah.
And then I had a meeting with him and the MLRO there at the time.
Right.
And I went back in and was doing sort of group operations. And at the time, kind of MLRO or money laundering. So you're talking about 2003, I think, 4. It wasn't, money laundering wasn't a thing. Not really. The 2003 regs were the first ones that kind of came out, really. Well, there were some before that, but they were, and it was like, come back and work for us. And, and I think at the time I was doing like 3 different jobs there, like operations, audit and compliance, because it wasn't really a thing. Yeah. And then it just grew. And
so why was the MLRO involved in the decision to bring you back? Because they were stressed?
No, because it was the MLRO also run the operations, so group operations like payments and compliance and, lots of different things came under that team at the time. Right. We even managed the cleaners and the estate. Yeah. It was almost like not operations, but, everything else.
Like a catch-all.
Yeah, pretty much. If it didn't have a home, it went to operations.
So you've gone back into that business having got a broad and diverse experience so it's actually worked out from what I can see really well. And you'd probably walk back in thinking, I know what I'm talking about here.
That's right.
Because it would have been a bit of a mess compared to the like tightly run, bottom line obsessed world of retail, thin margin stuff. I bet you felt awesome when you went back in there.
I did feel awesome, and I think it was more because it was definitely because I felt I knew a lot more than when I walked out. Yeah, I felt that having those few years away definitely made me better equipped to come back. And it's ironically, I always tell people now I'll never go back, but at the time it was the right thing to do. But it was these guys still want you, which means that I must have been good when I was there.
And you're even better.
Yeah, exactly. And I was even better.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
So did you? Was that the first job where you properly negotiated a package and all that sort of stuff?
Oh no,
still not there.
Wasn't there yet. Not with this man. No.
Why did you text? It was you that got back in touch. Right?
Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah. So it was a bit of a process. I think it all happened quite quickly in the end. I think I was back in again by the February or March.
Oh wow!
So it happened quite quickly, really.
Yeah. So how long did you stay in that role?
So that was another 9 years. It was that wasn't just that role, but because sort of anti-money laundering and the business, everything sort of grew exponentially. So by the time I left, I was running group operations, and I'd separated operations from compliance because they were no longer joined really. They had to be different.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was a very different, very, very different firm that I left than the one I joined. I mean, it had also been, there'd been an acquisition or a sale. So the guy and one of the reasons I decided to leave was the guy that I had all the respect for that put their faith in me, he left.
Right.
And I felt that I didn't want to spoil all of the good stuff that had happened. So I thought, it might be time to move on now. Let's not spoil the memories.
So is that when your like fraud career started?Id you move into something fraud and compliance related then, rather than operations?
Yes. Yeah. So I guess that was the first non-operations kind of related role. Would have been after that, and actually that next one was I was working for a firm and we were doing FX options.
Okay.
Because it was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Hard.
Yeah. The risk management around options is a challenge.
I'm sure.
Managing the book as well.
Yeah.
Those mornings where you wake up and the cable has gone. You're like, is it that morning? Is that the morning?
We'll print out the news clippings from this day. Yeah.
So
what is it? So what is an FX option for somebody that doesn't understand what an FX option is?
So an FX option is where, let's say, a business has a requirement for, let's say, I don't know, they want to buy widgets, and those widgets will cost them $1 million, and they're a pound-based business. So they want to be able to make sure that when it comes to buying those widgets, that they are getting the best price and they can budget for that.
Right.
Now, there are several different products that you can do that. One of them is a forward contract, which is not regulated. Mm-hmm. And a forward contract is, I guess, is a bit standard. So it's kind of like that's your price. And if the market moves, you pay margin to keep it live.
Was like a commitment to buy?
It's a commitment to buy, effectively. Yeah. But an FX option, they are a little bit, what's the expression? I guess you would say funkier. You can set levels. The more risk you want to take with an FX option, the greater the reward. So you can get
hand in hand, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas an FX forward is like that's your price, that's what you pay,
yeah,
that's it.
Gotcha.
But an option is actually depending on which way the market goes.
Yeah.
You can be massively better off than you would have been with a straightforward forward, or it could be you could be worse off.
Quite a bit the other way.
Yeah.
So you picked something spiky and you've gone in. So the next role after the role where you were there for 9 years, having gone back from retail, did you go into like a purely risk and compliance based role? And was that a step back on the basis that you got to the top of the tree in operations?
I guess it was. It felt a little bit like a step back at times because I guess when I was running the group ops at the previous firm, there were quite a lot of kind of different facets to it, not just the compliance part. It was, we ran the bank relationships and things like that.
Wow.
That was back in the days when you could get a bank account without any problem, which isn't the way necessarily in the fintech space now.
No.
Certainly not easy. I won't say it's hard and because, bankers might listen to this podcast.
They probably will. They know they're in trouble anyway. Yeah. So you've gone in, you've done something like risk compliance focus. What was the job?
What the title?
Broadly speaking.
I was head of risk and compliance.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's a decent landing into only doing that specific thing.
It was a really interesting firm as well because it was very much corporate based. So there was only a very small consumer base in the business. It was very. I would call it. I wouldn't say hard sale because I would say it was a hard environment, not a hard sales necessarily. So, you got to do well, and they set that up really, really well. The guys that ran that, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right. The way they set it up was like, you're at the bottom of the tree, right? You're looking up, and the guy at the top of the tree's got the Rolex watch, the handmade suit.
So is this the broker led?
Yeah.
So this is the notion that in a currency business,
Yep.
The brokers go out and win the business,
Yep.
and the business just supports those brokers. And when you come in at the bottom, you look at the top and you see that they're amazing. We've had with what we do, we've done really well in those spaces because there's always a tension between the commission-focused, coin-operated brokers and the compliance people that are slowing down their deals, right? And that's 100%. How they see it. And that tension for us is amazing because we're like, we'll get rid of that
that's right.
tension.
Exactly right.
So you were in the bad camp because you were the people that were slowing down the brokers. How did you manage that?
I think because I get, unlike a lot of the guys now that do similar jobs to me, I guess because I'd never done that as a job in its entirety. Yeah. You know, even if I always had a commercial role up until coming back that second time. It was, I understood the commerciality of what was going on. Yeah. I understood what it was that they wanted. So it was about driving the pace of the applications, getting that SLA down to about an hour or whatever it might have been at the time, and talking to clients and talking to these guys. And, I think I used to have, I think it was Neville's surgery, like one day a week, and it was like an hour or whatever, and it was like, my door's open, come and talk about your problem cases. Really? Well, not your problems, but your problem cases.
You can leave those in the bar you went to last night.
You can leave them at home.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got enough of my own to worry about.
Do you feel as though... because I can see that, like, maybe over the next... So how long ago was that? 10 years? Something like that?
About now, 10, 11 years.
So in 10 years, where you've been away from the things that gave you those habits, do you have to catch yourself sometimes from becoming too compliance narrow-minded, or do you think it's ingrained enough in you?
Yeah, you do. Because some days it's... I guess some days it's like everything, right? Some days... I guess you're seeing the risk, and because perhaps for whatever reason you're not necessarily seeing how to get through that, and it's more like an off day really. All I need to do is I just talk myself around. Yeah, I'm just like, hang on a sec, and I'll go, right, I need to think about that, and then I'll spend a few minutes just walking back through it. Yeah. Because there's in most cases, and I'm sure the guys where I work now would testify, it's, you always got to try and help these guys out and try and find a solution. Because
but you don't have aligned incentives.
No.
In a lot of times, because your incentive to the people that are leading the commercial part of the business is different.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to manage, I suppose.
It is, but it also, I always look at it from the perspective of, well, if the business isn't successful, then I'm going to be trying to find another job somewhere.
Yeah.
But
you hear compliance get talked about as deal prevention.
Oh yeah, the business prevention unit.
Exactly.
That's the norm. But I'd like to think I'm a bit different. And I've never considered myself to be too preventative. But sometimes you just can't do it.
Yeah, of course.
No matter how hard you try, you
have to be the
it.
bad guy to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So between that job, which is your first foray into this, and the jobs that you've had since, which was the one where you thought, and I don't mind you being overconfident here, which is the one where you thought, like, I really know what I'm doing now, and I feel like I'm respected enough in the industry to be a figure in the industry, because you are, right? Where was the place that you got that? Because I think it's a really important part of someone's career.
I think it would have been probably the job after that, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Where was that? What company?
OFX.
OFX, okay. How big was that company?
Listed on the Australian stock market.
Jeez. What was your title there?
Well, I started off as head of risk and compliance for the UK and Europe.
Right.
But when I... not long after I arrived there was a rumoured takeover.
Okay.
And the head of that office sort of left around that time. To be fair, he's had a very successful career since, so it was the right move. But at the time, he left me in it. because at the time I was probably, I guess sounds a bit arrogant, but probably the wisest head in the office.
Yeah.
And they were based out in Australia, so it was a sort of, I guess, a satellite office.
Yeah.
There were about 60 people, I think, or something like that there, 50, 60 people. And they asked me to do a kind of safe hands role. So, but obviously being the man with the most grey hair in the office probably was the one that they thought maybe he can at least, have a pair of safe hands. And then they asked me to do that job, permanently. So I became the head of UK and Europe, so sort of quasi-local managing director, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Which was, again, another foray into the commercial world.
So we're dragging you back in it?
Yeah.
So since then, something's drawing you back. Is it that kid that left school and wanted to work in customs?
Yeah. 100%.
That's dragging you back into it. And it's so amazing to see somebody who, because I speak to a lot of people doing this. And people go for bigger titles, bigger titles, bigger titles, bigger titles. But actually, it seems as though you've actually just followed the thing that you're really passionate about and still doing really impressive shit, right? But you've gone back to the stuff that makes you happy.
And it's also, for me, sometimes it's about what's the opportunity? And it doesn't have to be money. And I think, in fact, I very rarely move for money, I think.
It follows if you do the good work anyway, so...
Yeah, I mean, money's, don't get me wrong, my wife always wants me to earn good money. But that's another one I'm going to get kicked for.
You have a nice car to drive for 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it was always about, what's the opportunity here? Is it something I've not done before?
Yeah.
Is it something that I do that I love? Is it something I can build? Is there someone that, something that needs to be done, fixed, whatever? I always say whenever I've interviewed by anybody for a role or whatever, I always say to them, look, if you want someone that's going to, put their name on the door, and put their feet up, I said, that's not me. I said, you're talking to the wrong guy. I will come in and I will make changes. I will fix. I will do whatever it takes to assist in the success of that business from what I have control of.
Yeah.
So, I don't really stop thinking about good things I can do.
That's what makes a great career. And it's also why you've ended up doing what you're doing and having the reputation you're doing. So,
depends on what the reputation is, right?
It's a good one. It's a good one. Right.
And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks and see you again.